April 9, 1942, U.S. surrender of the Bataan Peninsula of the main Philippine island of the Luzon to the Japanese during World War II. In 1939 to 1945, the approximately 75,000 Filipino and American troops in Bataan were forced to make Andrew's 65 miles march to prison camps. The marcher made the trek in intense heat and were subjugated to harsh treatment by Japanese guards. Thousands perished in what became known as Bataan Death March. The day after Japan bombed the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the Japanese invasion of the Philippines began. Within a month, the Japanese had to capture Manila, the capital of the Philippines, and the American, the Filipino defender on the Luzon, the island on which Manila is located, were forced to retreat to the Bataan Peninsula. For the next 3 months, the combined U.S. and Filipino army held out despite a lack of naval and air support. Finally, on April 9, with his forces crippled, the starvation and disease of U.S. General Edward King Jr. in 1884 to 1958 surrendered his approximately 75,000 troops at Bataan. Bataan Death March aftermath. America avenged its defeat in the Philippines with the invasion of island of Leyte in October 1944. General Douglas MacArthur in 1880 to 1964, who in 1942 had famously promised to return to the Philippines, made good on his words in February 1945. U.S. Filipino forces recaptured the Bataan Peninsula and Manila was liberated in early March. Now, we're going to be visiting one of the famous places in Pampanga, and that is the landmark Death March. Last stop, a marker of the 1942 Death March installed at the San Fernando train station in Pampanga recalls how this restored landmark became last stop for Filipino and American soldiers forced by their Japanese captors to walk 104 kilometers during World War II. This Pampanga capital that became a landmark for freedom both during at the time national hero Jose Rizal and during World War II has been saved from neglect and oblivion thanks to the 8 years hard work by local heritage advocates and tourism officials. The train station was part of the Philippine National Railways, Manila to Dagupan route until after World War II and became the last stop of some 80,000 Filipino and American soldiers. During the infamous Death March, 71 years ago, the station is also known as Kilometer 102. Is remembered as well for serving the recruitment stop for Rizal, who visited San Fernando and Bacolor town on June 27, 1892, to protect the historic but neglected site in sitio settlement fee PNR in Barangay Village, Santo Niño. Here, the National Historical Institution listed it as a historical landmark in 2006 to honor the Filipino veterans of World War II. As early as 2005, the San Fernando Heritage Foundation began raising funds of the restoration of station in 2010 and 2011. The Philippine Tourism Authority, now known as the Tourism Infrastructure and Enterprise Zone Authority, or TIZA, funded by the restoration project. Records of the city government showed that in February 1892, Governor General Eulogo Despujol inaugurated the train station as part of the Manila-Dagupan line in the old PNR. La Liga of Filipino Recruitment. A day after arriving from Hong Kong in June 1892, Rizal visited Pampanga and met his Kapampangan friends and Masonic brothers in the station, apparently to recruit members for the La Liga Filipina. to members of the American Defender of Bataan and courageous. However, the station is recalled as the 6-mile or 104-kilometer walk forced on them by the Japanese military after the fall of Bataan on April 9, 1942, which they describe as one of the earliest and most severe in mistreatment of prisoners of war.
Ay, di naubos.
Ano nang mangyayari kung gatas ay tinigil niya? Paano na lang ang tibay niya ngayon?
Relax na iyang puso mo, gatas pa rin ito. New Bear Brand Choco Milk Drink. Katumbas sa tibay ng Bear Brand. May iron, zinc at 100% vitamin C.
Tuloy pa rin ang gatas.
Tuloy! Heto tayo ngayon, sama-samang umaahon, kapit kamay sa bawat hakbang. Malayo nang inabot ng iyong diskarte't galing, at kung sabay ang paglakbay, tiyak ang ating tagumpay. Ang galing ng Pilipino, iwagayway, ibang klase ang talino. Tapang ay walang kapantay, sa sipag mo tiyaga, umaangat buong bansa. At yan ang ating tagumpay, ito ang ating tagumpay. Patuloy silang humahanga, sa sipag mo angat sa iba, alay ang buong puso, yan tayo Pilipino. Ang Pinoy ay magaling, totoo ay nararating, at kung watawat ang gabay, tiyak ang ating tagumpay. Ang galing ng Pilipino, iwagayway, ibang klase ang talino. Tapang ay walang kapantay, sa sipag mo tiyaga, umaangat buong bansa. At yan ang ating tagumpay, ito ang ating tagumpay. Ang galing ng Pilipino, iwagayway, ibang klase ang talino. Tapang ay walang kapantay, sa sipag mo tiyaga, umaangat buong bansa. At yan ang ating tagumpay.
City of San Fernando, abandoned for 70 years until its revival by the local government. In 2005, a 125 years old train terminal here has come alive as a museum, drawing crowds seeking information about World War II and the country's struggle for freedom. People and groups commemorating the 75th anniversary of Death March on April 10 converge at the train station, each finding a connection to this mute witness to history. This was where the Japanese Imperial Army loaded like cattle about 75,000 Filipino and American soldiers into Bayon, closed compartment for sugar cargoes, after they were forced to march in 102 kilometers without food and water and under intense heat from Mariveles town to Bataan province. Because of every compartment was packed to the limit, many suffocated or were crushed to death. During the trip to Capas, according to a marker installed by the National Historical Commission of the Philippines near the station, the museum features a life-size death, March diorama by the Juan said. and several memorable lent by residents. No fees are charged. According to Ching Pangilinan, City Tourism Officer, most of the museum foreign visitors are Japanese. A team of Philippine Living in History Society (PLHS) dressed up as a Philippine Scout members of the U.S. Army Forces in the Far East and as soldiers of the Japanese Imperial Army took apart a reenactment of the Death March. The tragedy took place after the U.S. general surrendered Bataan to Japan on April 9, 1942, following months of the defense without food and reinforcements in the Registry of the Philippine Veteran Affairs Office (PVAO). Only 8,503 World War II veterans are alive to date, according to retired Bridge General T. Aguilar, Chief of PVAO Military Shrine Management Office. Sarah and her husband Ras Van Eiderstein, a Vietnam War veteran, checked out the facility to get the feel of what her father Oscar Leonard went through. Leonard, a member of the U.S. Army Air Corps who turned 98 in May, climbed a Mount Samat where President Duterte led the 75th anniversary of our Cagatingan. It was his third time he returned to Samat, the highest point of the Bataan Peninsula. The Allied force defends for months. He still remembers the faces of men he killed. Sarah said. Last stop, a marker of the 1942 Death March installed at the San Fernando train station in Pampanga recalls how this restored landmark became last stop for Filipino and American soldiers forced by their Japanese captors to walk 104 kilometers during World War II. This Pampanga capital that became a landmark for freedom both during at the time national hero Jose Rizal and during World War II has been saved from neglect and oblivion thanks to the 8 years hard work by local heritage advocates and tourism officials. Philippines during World War II, the total distance march from Maribeles to San Fernando and from the Capas train station to Camp Odeño is variously reported by the differing sources as between 60 and 69.6 miles to 96.6 and 112.0 kilometers. Different resources also report widely differing prisoners of war casualties prior to reacting Camp Odeño, from 5,000 to 80,000 Filipinos dead and 500 to 650 Americans dead. During the March of the Death March was characterized by severe physical abuse and wanton killings and was later judged by the Allied Military Commission to be a Japanese war crime. Philippines during World War II, the total distance march from Maribeles to San Fernando and from the Kapas train station to Camp Odeño is variously reported by the differing sources as between 60 and 69.6 miles to 96.6 and 112.0 kilometers. Different resources also report widely differing prisoners of war casualties prior to reacting Camp Odeño from 5,000 to 80,000 Filipinos dead and 500 to 650 Americans dead. During the March of the Death March was characterized by severe physical abuse and wanton killings and was later judged by the Allied Military Commission to be a Japanese war crime. World War II Bataan Death March. The Bataan Death March was when the Japanese forces 76,000 captured Allied soldiers, Filipino and Americans, to march about 80 miles across the Bataan Peninsula. The march took place in April of 1942 during World War II. The question is, where is Bataan? Bataan is a province in the Philippines on the island of Luzon. It is peninsula on the Manila Bay across from the capital city of Manila. Leading up to the march. After bombing Pearl Harbor, Japan quickly began to take over much of Southeast Asia. As the Japanese troops approached the Philippines, U.S. General Douglas MacArthur moved the U.S. forces from the city of Manila, Bataan Peninsula. He did this hoping to save city of Manila from destruction. After 3 months of fierce fighting, the Japanese defeated the U.S. and Filipino army on Bataan at Battle of Bataan. On April 9, 1942, General Edward King Jr. surrendered to the Japanese. There were about 76 combined Filipino and American troops, around 12,000 Americans, that surrendered to the Japanese. What is their plan? The Japanese commander knew he had to do something with the large army he had captured. He planned to move them to Camp Odeño, about 80 miles away, which the Japanese would turn into a prison. The prisoners would walk part of the way when they ride the train events, rest of the way. The size of the army captured took the Japanese by surprise. They thought they were the only around 25,000 Allied soldiers, not 76,000. They divided the army into smaller groups of 100 to 1,000 men, took their weapons and told them to start marching. The Death March. The Japanese did not give prisoners food or water for 3 days. As the soldiers became weaker and weaker of them started to fall behind the group. Those that fell behind were beaten and killed by the Japanese. Sometimes exhausted prisoners were driven over by trucks and other army vehicles. Once the prisoners reached the train station, they were crammed into the train so tight they had to stand for the rest of the journey. Those that could not fit and were forced to march the entire way to the camp. The end of the march. The march lasted for 6 days. No one is sure how many soldiers died along the way, but estimates put the death toll between 5,000 and 10,000 once the soldiers reached the camp. Condition didn't improve much. Thousands more died at the camp from starvation and disease over the next few years. The result? Well, the prisoners that survived were rescued in early 1945. When the Allies retook the Philippines, the Japanese officer in charge of the march, General Masaharu Homma, was executed for the war crimes against humanity. Interesting facts about Bataan Death March? Well, here's some list. General MacArthur wanted to personally stay and fight to Bataan but was ordered by the President Roosevelt to evacuate. Number 2. When the Japanese first captured the army, they executed around 400 Filipino officers who had surrendered. Number 3. The Japanese attempted to cover up the event by having the local newspaper. The prisoners were well treated.
Please lang wag kang magulat kung bigla akong magkalat. Ganyan talaga akong bata, minsan natutulala. San-san nadadapa, san-san bumabangga. Pasensya ka na kung minsan ako'y natataranta. Minsan ako'y sumasablay, minsan hindi makasabay. Mahal pa rin ni nanay at tatay. Kahit kailanman, laging mahal ni nanay at tatay. Ako ang hari, ako ang hari. Ooh, I did my best po, nanay. Todo bigay po ako, tatay. Pasensya ka na kung minsan ako'y natataranta. Minsan ako'y sumasablay, minsan hindi makasabay. Mahal pa rin ni nanay at tatay. Kahit kailanman, laging mahal ni nanay at tatay. Ako ang hari, ako ang hari.
Handips!
Nips, nips.
Bulilit, bulilit, sanay sa masikip. Kung kumilos, kumilos, ang liit-liit. Bulilit. Kung kumilos, ang liit-liit.
Sa bagong bahay, may magandang buhay. Ganito na kami ngayon sa Camellia.
Right! Mga pakatoka game! Nagkakagulo ang mga fans.
Who's there ba? They're so ingay.
Si Piolo pala. Sprite please. Ang tanong, ano ang gagawin mo? A. Papa, autograph. B. Deadma. O C. Hahalik ka.
Tao na ako! I love him!
Magpakatoka! Parang Sprite! Magkuhaw ka! Inumin mo!
Picture tayo!
Kamatayan sa Bataan, Japanese, Hepburn. Batashino Kojin was forcible transfer by the Imperial Japanese Army of 60,000 to 80,000 American and Filipino prisoners of war from Saysayan Point, Bagak, Bataan, and Mariveles to Campo Odeño, Capastarlac via San Fernando, Pampanga, where the prisoners were loaded onto trains. The transfer began on April 9, 1942. After the 3 months of Battle of Bataan in the Philippines during World War II, the total distance march from Mariveles to San Fernando and from Capas train station, Camp Odeño is variously reported by differing sources as between 60 and 69.6 miles and 96.6 and 112.0 kilometers. Differing sources also report widely different prisoners of war casualties prior of reaching Camp Odeño, from 5,000 to 18,000 Filipino dead and 500 to 650 Americans dead during the march, and the march was characterized by severe physical abuse and wanton killings, and was later judged by the Allied Military Commission to be a Japanese war crime. The Battle of Bataan, Filipino-Labanan sa Bataan, January 7 to April 9, 1942, was a battle fought by the United States and the Philippines against Japan during World War II. The battle represented the most intense phase of the Japanese invasion of the Philippines during World War II. In January 1942, forces of the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy invaded Luzon along with the several islands in the Philippines archipelago after the bombing of the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. The commander-in-chief of all U.S. and Filipino forces in the island, General Douglas MacArthur, consolidated all of the Luzon-based unit on the Bataan Peninsula to fight against the Japanese army. By this time, the Japanese controlled nearly all the Southeast Asia. The Bataan Peninsula and the island of Congredo were the only remaining Arab strongholds in the region. Despite a lack of supplies, American and Filipino forces to manage to fight the Japanese for 3 months, engaging them initially in a fighting retreat southward. As the combined American and Filipino forces made a last stand, the delay cost the Japanese valuable time and prevented immediate victory across the Pacific. The American surrendered at Bataan to the Japanese with 76,000 soldiers. Surrendering in the Philippines altogether was the largest in American and Filipino military histories, and was the largest United States surrender since this American Civil War battled the Harper Ferry, for soon afterward U.S. and Filipino prisoners of war were forced into Bataan Death March. After the war, an American military tribunal led Lieutenant General Honma Masaharu, commander of the Japanese invasion forces in the Philippines. He was held responsible for the Death March war crime and was executed by the firing squad on April 3, 1946. This is where World War II and Death March ended. It's all thanks for brave Filipino and American soldiers who have fought and risked their lives for the sake of our country, for the freedom, for the enjoyment, for the future of our country. Who has risked their lives to protect citizens, to even suffered the wrath of Japanese Imperial Army. We salute everyone. We salute every soldier, every army who have fought and suffered just for the sake of their country. Just like the soldier in Philippines, the soldier of American and Philippine who have fought and suffered in Japanese Imperial Army just for the sake of the freedom